Welcome back to another video, and I'm the Awesome Possum. In the previous video, we learned how to texture a landscape in Gaia. In this video, we're going to learn how to export your terrain and textures so we can use them in Blender. Now, without wasting any more time, let's get started. Now back in Gaia, to export your textures, hover over the node you want to export, right-click and select Mark for Export. Or you can use the shortcut F3. And you should see this icon on the node, which indicates that it's been marked for export. So we want to export our final color texture, and then we also want to export our different masks. Don't forget to also export the lake mask as well. You could also export the different set maps, but that's not always necessary, since all our color information already exists in our final color map. Next, we want to export the terrain. Before exporting our terrain, I'd like to show you how to export a normal map. First, let's add the adjust node and input the lake portal as we did in the previous video. Now with the node selected, hit the tab key and search for the normals and select it. And here on the top right, you'll see the settings for the normal map. By default, the normal map will appear green and is set to Y up. Now without overcomplicating it, since we're using Blender, which has Z or Z as the up and down axis, then we're going to select Z up. You'll also see the normal map turn purple, which is what we're used to seeing from normal maps. So that's another way of knowing which one to select. I also select detail, but usually don't mess with the other settings. Now to export the terrain, search for the measure node and select it. Again, on the top right, we'll find our settings. There's quite a bit to cover here, so let's go over the settings. First is format. Pretty self-explanatory. Which format would you like to export the mesh in? You can select your preferred format based on your software's requirements. Blender will accept all of these, but I prefer using GLB. Next is scale. I tried changing the scale to kilometer but didn't really notice a difference, so just leave it at default. And then there's topology. This is also an important setting depending on what you're exporting for, but I'll quickly go over the differences between these. Okay, so first is tris. Tris produces a triangulated mesh. And then there's quads. Quad produces a quad mesh, which has an even distribution of faces, which will result in a denser mesh, but it's great if you want to displace it later. And then there's adaptive. This is the method that's most efficient and cost effective when it comes to poly count, so it only uses topology where it's needed. And the last setting we're going to look at is vertices per size. This controls your terrain's level of detail, and this section shows the terrain's base size. So the bigger your terrain will be, or the closer to camera it will be, then the higher this needs to be. The cool thing is you can also export the highest quality mesh and add LODs, which will be lower quality versions of the mesh. So you can have a high quality asset for close-ups and use lower poly terrain for background assets. This is an incredible feature. Now at the bottom of the middle tab, if you click on build, you'll see all the textures you've marked for export. If you click on the top right icon, you can change all the file formats of all the textures all at once, but you can also change them individually. Now when you're ready to export, you want to click on build. For the free version, you can only output 1024 x 1024. If you'd like to preview the textures immediately after they finished exporting, you can click on open folder after build finishes. Click on start build, and Gaia will process all your nodes and create your terrain and textures. Once it's done, a window will pop up with all your builds from Gaia. So in the latest versions of Blender, you can simply drag and drop your files straight from your browser to import them into Blender. So we'll first start by importing our landscape, which is the GLB file we exported from Gaia. Once you've imported your landscape, firstly we want to fix the scale. This isn't very important to understand for what we'll be doing, but it's always good to work in the correct scale as often as necessary, because things like camera placement, lights, and textures are directly affected by the scale of your environment. So it's good practice to work as close to real-world scale as possible. I chose 1/2 kilometer for this landscape. It's also a great idea to have a human scale reference on standby for every environment you create. I avoided this in the past, but I highly suggest that you do this for every scene. Now, one of the ways to get more cinematic environments is through the use of composition. I haven't really seen much of this technique being used in Blender, but by activating the walk navigation and gravity, you can basically do virtual location scouting. and think like a cinematographer or director to find the best compositions. And this can also help you block out action sequences if you're working on a film. Once you find the right spot or composition that you're happy with, just hit Ctrl-Alt-0, numpad 0 to lock the camera to the view. Now on to the texturing.
You ready to fill them stomachs up with some
First, let's rename our material to GAEA Basic Landscape. Next, we'll drag and drop all the textures we're gonna need. Connect the color texture to the PBR node. If you preview the landscape in render view, everything looks great right off the bat, but I'm gonna show you a few more things to make it look better. Another thing I don't see very often, but I like to do when texturing, is to set my base color to black. This is great for just previewing the effects of the bump maps and the reflections. This way we can very easily preview how the normal map is affecting the landscape. This would be much harder to see if we had our color information. Make sure to change your normal map to non-color. When you preview the normal map, by default, you'll see something weird in the shading. To fix this, change your normal map node from object space to world space. You can also use the curvature mask that we exported from GAEA to add more high-frequency details using the bump node in Blender. I also tried plugging the base color into the specular for more variation in the reflection. Okay, now after all the texturing work, if you preview the landscape, you might not see any difference right away. But the reason why we chose to preview our asset in black is because we solely focused on how the light interacts with the 3D object. Once you get that right, it will feel much better. The last thing we can do is fake the dirt and buildup between our crevices by multiplying the occlusion node with our base texture. Another way to approach this is creating a different material for every unique texture on the landscape. So we'll join all these nodes into a group and call it rocks. We're going to duplicate it, make it a unique user. This is important because if you make changes, then it will change both nodes unless you make it a unique user. And then you can change some properties and have it appear more like grass. So for distant grass, reduce the specularity a lot. Next, we'll combine the nodes and use our slope mask to separate the rocks from the grass. So this method uses the color information from the original texture, and we get our variation through masking roughness and specularity. It's a great way to add more detail. Finally, we're going to create a simple water shader and combine it using the lake mask. And there you have it. Your landscape is now textured.
It's off the chain, baby.
Now because we're using colors and not actual textures, your landscape won't look great up close. For the free version of GAEA, which outputs at 1K, the landscapes are always best at a distance. So a higher angle further away always looks great. I also added volumetrics from my really volume on Gumroad. I just created a light version that I use all the time, but on Gumroad you can find the exact same thing that has all the features and even more control, so check it out. And again, the final stage is where your story counts. You can add houses, trees, clouds, birds to bring your landscape to life. Because to me, the overused term cinematic simply means story. In what way can you tell the story to me without using a single word? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.